You fired her for feeding a hungry child? Unbelievable. Emily, a compassionate elementary school teacher, had always believed in kindness. When she noticed a student coming to school hungry, she did something that cost her dearly, but 30 minutes later, an unexpected guest arrived, and everything changed. Hi everyone, welcome to Stories Unfolded. Today, I'm excited to share a story that will touch your heart and remind you of the power of kindness. Let's dive right in. Emily Johnson was in her mid-30s, with a heart full of passion and a desire to make a difference. She was the kind of teacher who would arrive early and leave late, always planning her lessons and thinking of new ways to inspire her students. Her classroom was a lively, colorful place, filled with charts, maps, and bright posters. There were shelves brimming with books, a corner dedicated to science projects, and even a small garden outside where the children would plant flowers and vegetables each spring. She believed that learning should be an adventure, a journey where every child felt valued and important. Emily's teaching career had begun almost 12 years ago. From the start, she knew she wanted to work in a place where she could truly make a difference. That's how she found herself at Parkside Elementary, a school nestled in a modest, working-class neighborhood. The school was known for its diverse student population, children from all walks of life, some from well-off families, but many from households struggling to make ends meet. To Emily, it was the perfect place to fulfill her dream of teaching with a purpose. Over the years, Emily had come to know her students well. She had seen the quiet pain in their eyes, the looks that spoke of missed meals and sleepless nights. She knew the challenges many of them faced: broken homes, parents working 2 or 3 jobs, and the constant worry of not having enough. Her heart ached for these kids, and she often went out of her way to help them in small, meaningful ways. She would bring in extra school supplies, buy them books, and occasionally bring in snacks to share. One Monday morning, as Emily was setting up her classroom for the day, she noticed Liam, a quiet, shy 3rd grader, sitting alone at his desk. Liam was a bright child, with a love for stories and a knack for solving puzzles. But today, he seemed different. His head was down, his face pale, and his eyes looked tired and sunken. Emily had been teaching long enough to recognize the signs. She walked over to him gently and asked, "Liam, are you feeling okay?" Liam looked up at her, his big brown eyes filled with a mix of embarrassment and sadness. He mumbled something, almost inaudible. Emily leaned in closer. "I didn't eat breakfast," he whispered, "or dinner last night. There wasn't anything at home." Emily's heart sank. She knew Liam's family had been going through a tough time. His father had recently lost his job at the local factory, and his mother worked long hours as a waitress. She had noticed Liam coming to school with less food in his lunchbox, and sometimes no food at all. She had tried to speak to the school administration about setting up a more substantial lunch program for children like Liam, but her requests had always been met with bureaucratic red tape. Emily made a quick decision. She went to her bag and pulled out the sandwich she had packed for herself that day. It wasn't much, a simple peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but it was all she had. "Here, Liam," she said softly, handing him the sandwich. "I want you to have this." Liam hesitated, looking around nervously. "But, Miss Emily, I don't want to get you in trouble." Emily smiled warmly. "Don't worry about me, Liam. Just eat, okay? You need your strength for the day." Liam took the sandwich, his small hands trembling, and began to eat slowly. Emily watched as color gradually returned to his face. She felt a sense of relief and satisfaction, knowing she had done the right thing, even if it was against the rules. However, Unbeknownst to Emily, Mrs. Harper, the school principal, had been observing the scene from the hallway. Mrs. Harper was known for her strict adherence to school policies. She was a no-nonsense woman who believed in discipline, rules, and keeping order. She had been the principal for over 15 years and had a reputation for being hard, sometimes even harsh, with both students and teachers. She had always viewed Emily's compassionate approach with skepticism, thinking it could lead to unnecessary complications. When Mrs. Harper saw Emily giving the sandwich to Liam, her face flushed with anger. She immediately stormed over to the classroom door. "Emily!" she called out, her voice echoing through the hall. "A word in my office now." Emily, sensing the tension, asked one of the other teachers to watch her class and followed Mrs. Harper down the hallway. Her mind raced with a mix of concern and frustration. What could be so wrong about feeding a hungry child? In Mrs. Harper's office, the atmosphere was tense. The principal closed the door behind her and sat down with a stern look on her face. "Emily," she began, "you know the school's policy on providing food to students. It's strictly prohibited for a teacher to give out food, especially outside the cafeteria's guidelines. This isn't the first time you've disregarded our rules." Emily took a deep breath. "Mrs. Harper, I understand the policy, but Liam was hungry. He hadn't eaten since yesterday, and I couldn't just ignore that." Mrs. Harper's expression hardened. "That's not your call to make, Emily. We have procedures in place for these situations. If a child doesn't have food, he can go to the office, and we'll contact his parents or provide a meal voucher for the cafeteria. What you did was against protocol, and it puts the school at risk." Emily felt a surge of frustration. A meal voucher? That process takes time, and by then, Liam would have gone the entire morning hungry. "He's just a child, Mrs. Harper. I did what I thought was right." Mrs. Harper stood up, her face red with anger. "Right? You thought it was right. That's precisely the problem, Emily. You think you know better than the rules we have in place. I'm sorry, but this is the last straw. You're fired, effective immediately. Please pack up your things and leave the premises." Emily felt as if the ground had been pulled out from beneath her feet. Fired. For showing kindness? She wanted to argue, to plead her case, but she knew it would be pointless. Mrs. Harper had made up her mind. With a heavy heart, she nodded and walked out of the office, trying to hold back the tears threatening to spill. As she returned to her classroom, word of what had happened spread like wildfire through the school. Liam, who had overheard parts of the conversation, ran outside, tears streaming down his face. Several parents who were dropping off their children saw Liam crying and rushed over to find out what was wrong. "Liam, what happened?" asked Mrs. Turner, one of the more active parents in the school's PTA. Liam sobbed. "Miss Emily got fired because she gave me a sandwich. It's all my fault." The parents were shocked. Mrs. Turner, who had always admired Emily's dedication and love for her students, felt a wave of anger rising within her. They fired her for feeding a hungry child. She muttered, disbelief and outrage evident in her voice. Within minutes, parents began gathering, discussing the situation and planning their next steps. Mrs. Turner, who was also a member of the town council, quickly made a few phone calls. Soon, the mayor's office was buzzing with calls from concerned citizens. The story spread across the small town like wildfire, igniting a flame of indignation and support for Emily. Meanwhile, inside the school, Emily was slowly packing her belongings, her hands trembling with emotion. She had given her heart and soul to this job, and now it was being taken away from her because she cared too much. As she packed, she couldn't help but wonder if she had made the right choice. She thought of Liam, his hungry face, and decided that yes, she would do it all over again. As she was about to leave, a commotion outside drew her attention. She peered out of the window and saw a crowd gathering in front of the school. Parents, students, and even some teachers were there, holding signs and chanting her name. At the center of the crowd was Mayor Thompson, a kind man known for his love of the community. The mayor made his way through the crowd and knocked on Mrs. Harper's door. When she opened it, he said, "Mrs. Harper, I've heard about what happened today, and I must say, I'm deeply concerned." Mrs. Harper, taken aback by the mayor's presence, tried to regain her composure. "Mayor Thompson, I understand this may seem harsh, but rules are rules, and we must enforce them." The mayor shook his head. "I'm all for rules, Mrs. Harper, but I'm also for common sense and compassion. Firing a teacher for feeding a hungry child? That's not something this community can support. We take pride in our values, and kindness is one of them." Mrs. Harper hesitated. "But we have policies." The mayor raised a hand. "Policies that prevent us from helping those in need are policies we need to revisit. I urge you to reconsider your decision, not just for Emily's sake, but for the community's. The people here love her, and she's done more good than harm." Emily, still standing by her classroom door, heard the mayor's words and felt a glimmer of hope. She knew she wasn't alone in this fight. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Mrs. Harper sighed deeply. "Very well, I will review the decision. But we must ensure this never happens again without proper procedures." The crowd outside erupted in cheers as the news spread. Emily was overwhelmed with emotion. Parents came up to her, thanking her, and Liam ran up and hugged her tightly, tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Miss Emily," he whispered. "Thank you for caring." The community rallied around Emily, and within days, a new program was set up to ensure no child went hungry at Parkside Elementary. The school's policies were revised to prioritize the well-being of students over rigid rules. And Emily, she went back to her classroom, more determined than ever to be the teacher who not only taught lessons, but also lived them. Emily's story quickly spread beyond the town. A local news station covered it, and soon it went viral. People everywhere praised Emily for her courage and compassion. Donations poured in to support the school's new meal program, and the community came together like never before. Emily was humbled by the outpouring of love and support. She realized that sometimes doing the right thing might seem like a small act, but it can spark a movement that changes everything. She continued to teach with passion, knowing that she had made a difference, not just in Liam's life, but in the hearts of everyone who heard her story. In the end, Emily taught her most valuable lesson. Kindness, above all, is the greatest rule to follow.